Evening all. Well, it's been quite a strange news cycle this week. Lots of things, very incongruous things happening. And some of them come out from completely nowhere, and it's been interesting to see the reactions of people. So I'm going to start with the war that wasn't quite, which is in the aftermath of the US's assassination of General Soleimani. What was interesting to note was, first of all, Michael Moore and Richard Spencer just being allied on this issue, putting Iranian flags in their Twitter handles, and Moore's kind of grovelling plea for mercy from the Iranians, which was very embarrassing, very unedifying of him, from a man who is specialising in being unedifying. I think each year he becomes doubly more so. I don't know how much further he can go. But being the arch hypocrite that he is, wasn't too surprised. I think Moore is fast becoming an embarrassment to the left. I wonder when they'll catch on and ditch him. So obviously somebody who's that close and friendly with Harvey Weinstein probably has skeletons of his own in his cupboard. But it is interesting to note that his words and Richard Spencer's words were almost mirroring each other. Possibly this is more proof of the horseshoe theory, isn't it? The further left you go, the further right you go, you find yourself meeting on Twitter over an Iranian flag. And one other thing about it is that the person who's most accused of being a warmonger, particularly and a hawk when it comes to Middle Eastern policy, is Ben Shapiro. But Ben Shapiro called for restraint, saying, okay, there's been the assassination of Soleimani, and there's been a retaliatory missile strike that didn't do a lot of damage. Okay, time to dial things down. And once you got Ben Shapiro saying it's time to dial things down on the threat of war front, his critics, where they've got to go, where's their manoeuvre, where's their wriggle room? So what you end up with is kind of people having to go pro-Iranian in order to cast Shapiro's moderation as somehow wrong and villainous. It was interesting to note that. And on a lighter note, though, I can't go without mentioning the Golden Globes, which I think dropped like a bombshell, really. I don't think anybody... people were expecting Ricky Gervais to be his normal sarcastic, spicy self. I didn't know he'd go full on, declare war on Hollywood. Now, I'm not going to recap his jokes and comments, but what I will say is that his delivery, what he chose to have a go at Hollywood about, and the way he pitched it, his choice of words, it was very much like he was representing the ordinary person, Joe Public, at this event. It was like a member of Joe Public had got up at that podium and lambasted Hollywood. It's how most people have been thinking the last few years, with actors and actresses, celebrities, filmmakers using award ceremonies as a political soapbox. People are sick and tired of it, and Gervais pointed this out. And whilst pointing out the hypocrisy, these people's lifestyles and what they preach that the rest of us should do, and the brilliant evisceration of Tim Cook from Apple, this was all absolutely needed, and it is a victory for the anti-left in the culture wars. And it was a victory that was done in the sight of the normies. I keep saying culture war is about the hearts and minds of the normies. And this is, even though the ratings for award shows have dropped, it's still a major TV event. It's something that gets reported on. It's something that people are aware of. You know, it gets out of the kind of online world and into television and the world where normies mostly inhabit. So I rolled my eyes with some disbelief at Stefan Molyneux's comment that, because Ricky Gervais backed Labour in the most recent election and his overall left-wing political opinions, he's no ally. We shouldn't be saying this is victory. He's no ally. Well, that's not the point. He's a temporary ally. Just like in some wars, World War II. You had to take on allies from very strange places that wouldn't normally be your ally, but you have a common enemy, you have a common foe, and you form temporary alliances. You become co-belligerents. And that's what I view Gervais on. Was he right about the UK general election? No. Is he right about Brexit? No. Is he right to support the Labour Party? No. But he absolutely did the job that was needed to be done on Golden Globes night. He said what needed to be said. And we now find ourselves in agreement with Ricky Gervais on this issue. So why carp? Why split hairs? Why set up a purity test for Ricky Gervais? He doesn't measure up to what we want, we believe. So therefore, we must reject him altogether. No, as I said, he is a co-belligerent on this issue, and he's just handed us a culture war victory. Accept it for what it is. After all, for the likes of Stephen Molyneux, he wasn't going to get invited to host the Golden Globes or any other awards ceremony, is he? Right. I mean, he's a guy that has difficulty getting into Australia and New Zealand for things he's allegedly said. It's how people have interpreted what he said. He can't go into certain countries now. So he's not going to be any help in the culture wars, not in this regard, because his cachet with the normies is really low. It's just the way it is. I'm not saying everything that Stephen Molyneux says is bad. He says a lot of good things, but let's face reality here. He's not going to get into people's televisions at home unless he's being smeared by some network TV channel. So let's get real. If somebody on the left decides they're going to align with us, and this is the same thing about the turf versus the trans issues. If you think women's sports should be between women, biological women, if you think things like women-only spaces and prisons and respecting biological women is important, you're going to find yourself in temporary alignment with TERFs. And rather than just say, well, they're TERFs, they're not worth it, they're not worth it, I'm not going to go anywhere near them. Right, we just get divided. Because who is better placed to take the fight in certain areas than people we disagree with on most political issues? But when we come into alignment on a single issue, we march alongside them. It's just good strategy. You need every resource that you can get. And you can't do that if you're perennially in an ivory tower, just looking down at everybody who disagrees with you. And you can't form those alliances. And you can't form a kind of pact to deal with a problem that's in front of you. Sometimes you have to do that. So, no, Stephen Molyneux was wrong on this one. Let's move on to something even more light-hearted. So, I think a month ago I didn't really know who the Groypers were. And now they're my sworn enemies. Well done. I'm not going to recap my beef with the Groypers in general. But this week, their leader, Obergruppenführer Nick J. Fuentes, was caught on a live stream with somebody called Catboy, who apparently, and I'm going to say apparently here because the Groypers always go, oh, you used to lie and smear about us all the time. So I'm just going to say allegedly. Yeah. So he was caught on a live stream with a young man who likes to dress up as a feminized cat fetishist, complete with the dildo. And of course the Groypers are backtracking, and what I'm going to say here is, a couple of months ago Ben Shapiro did that speech at Stanford where he just tore into the Groypers, and I didn't really know who they were, and I thought he was going after people like Paul Joseph Watson or Stephen Molyneux, people like that. And I thought, that's wrong. I don't like this speech. I think Shapiro is just way off base here. And then I discovered who he was referring to, the Groypers. And funny enough, everything that Shapiro said in that Stanford speech has come true. His assessment of their characters has come true. So, what can I say? Negative. Maybe he's becoming a positive. Just putting it out there. Then we had Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and their decision to step back from their royal duties and move to Canada. And this has been met with a lot of furore and counter-furore. This is, on one hand, this is bad, because they're turning their back on duty and responsibility, and that is something that the royal family is charged with doing, charged with showing an example of duty and responsibility. And I think a lot of people in the public feel let down by this, feel betrayed that the Duke and Duchess are not going to be doing that. Analogies have been made to Edward VIII, and Wallace Simpson. There are some similarities. I think it's a bit facile to draw too many similarities, but there are some. And I think the disappointment in the two of them is justifiable. And do I think there's going to be some kind of constitutional crisis that will damage the royal family? I don't think so in the long term. I think in the long term, the line of succession is secure. This is what happens, and we've seen this with Prince Andrew as well, and that is if you're the spare, as they're known, if you're further removed from the line of succession, just what the hell are you supposed to do? You've got Princess Anne on the one hand, who does her duties, still carries out her duties to the utmost of her ability, and well done her. But I think with Andrew and now with Harry, that they have they've gone wrong, and that's putting it mildly. I think in two different ways. But I don't think this will affect the monarchy too badly, because I think everything else is in place. A lot of people complain about Prince Charles and all that, but he does get the concept of duty, and he's done that. Prince William and Princess Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, I think she's an exemplary model. She gets it, and it's a shame that this news broke on her birthday, where we should have been celebrating her birthday and the things that she does for the monarchy, and how well she has done from being a commoner, kind of middle-class girl next door, and how she has risen to the challenge of being in the royal family. We should have been celebrating that. Instead, we got this situation with Harry and Meghan. They're going off to Canada, which is like a South Park episode in itself. But the institution is robust enough. You know, people bitch and moan and complain and wail and stamp their feet. But frankly, the media is so toothless at the moment. I don't think it will have a long-term detrimental effect on the monarchy. The other thing to note is that if you criticise Meghan at all for the way she's conducted herself, her opinions, the way she is trying to force wokeness on people whilst being hypocritical at the same time, if you criticise any of that, you're a racist. And this is the whole disgusting thing about the false racism card, which I'll elaborate more on the next story. But it's all bunk. And if you criticise the Duchess of Sussex for being for her opinions and her actions and her behaviour, and anybody calls you a racist for that, just call them out. Stand tall, stand proud, say no. Right, shut up, you liar. Okay, so that links me on to my next point. So it's with great sadness that we've lost two people who, in their different ways, I admired. So first of all, a couple of days ago, we lost Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush. I'm quite a Rush fan. Actually, I've seen them live 4 times. So I've seen Piatt in full cry as a rock drummer 4 times. Very different tours over the years. And when people say that he is probably one of the top 3 rock drummers of all time, that's no exaggeration. I would put him up there. A lot of the drummers I like, kind of a little bit jazzy. So Bill Bruford and John Heisman are 2 of my all-time favourites. But I acknowledge that they come from a kind of jazz rather than a rock background. In terms of rock drummers, Ginger Baker as well classifies as a kind of blues jazz drummer more than a rock drummer. But in terms of rock music, heavy, hard rock, or what Rush did was a kind of combination of hard rock and progressive rock. I would put him alongside Carl Palmer. I think Carl Palmer's the only other one that I could say was an equal to Piatt, but certainly Piatt was, yes, for a kind of rock sound, there was no one better. And he did dabble in jazz one time. He did play a few years ago with the Buddy Rich Orchestra and held his own quite well. I think he earned the admiration of the Buddy Rich Orchestra, and they're a tough crowd because Buddy Rich was the greatest drummer in all formats ever. So, R.I.P. Neil Peart. I haven't even mentioned his lyrics. I mean, he was accused of being a fascist at one time because he was inspired by the works of Ayn Rand. I think his fandom really extended to The Fountainhead. That was his favourite book. Man who suffered tragedy in his life. His daughter died in a car crash. His wife also died young. He remarried, had another child, got on with his life, but it was always a constant source of hurt, losing his child in a car crash. Nothing but the utmost respect for Neil Peart, drummer, lyricist, apparently all-round good guy. And the other sad news that's come in today is the death of Sir Roger Scruton, the academic, conservative philosopher, architectural historian, amongst other things. I mean, was he a polymath? Well, certainly his topics and areas of expertise encompass more than just 1 or 2 fields. And this comes as a great sadness to me because only in the last 2 years have I really become really aware of his work. I mean, he was a name that was mentioned a lot of times over the years, but I'd never really read anything or heard any of his lectures until the last 2 years. And I was won over not only by his ideas, his thinking, his grasp of subjects, but by a kind of gentleness of spirit and humility as well, which is often sadly lacking in academia these years. And when you think, just a few months ago, he was lied about and smeared by George Eaton of the New Statesman. And his latter career was under a cloud. He was dismissed from a post he was the best qualified person to hold. And the Conservative Party, who he'd been a philosopher for and a staunch supporter of, an advisor to for decades, practically turned their backs on him for a while, rescinded his membership, and he was smeared and abandoned. And Douglas Murray stood up for him and won him back the trust and respect, particularly amongst the Conservative Party, who I think apologised, but he didn't take up that post they offered him. But in terms of everything else, he was exonerated 100%, and rightfully so. And there's an idiot academic, or so-called academic. I don't know if I can prove that He's an academic. I've done a little bit of research, but anyway, he was calling Scruton a racist and a homophobe, and repeating the lies that George Eaton spread. And it's just deeply unpleasant that on the day that somebody's died, when a family is mourning, when friends are mourning, when tributes are being paid, not just from his supporters and fans, but from people who of the opposite politics are paying tribute, that this charlatan, so-called academic, is taking to Twitter. So, shame on these people. Shame on anyone who just dances on the graves of the recently departed, particularly those whose only crime seemed to have been to hold a different political opinion. And I just get disgusted by the progressive left sometimes, because they not only do they believe lies, but when it's proven to them that it has been lies, what they've been saying, they don't care. They just double down, and I find it sickening that they have no respect for life. They have no respect for human beings, or for decency, or for common decency. They don't hold back, just even for a day, 2 days. They don't hold back. They respect no one and nothing, and this is what disgusts me about the progressive left. Absolutely disgusts me, and which is why it's unpleasant to read something like that, to read the comments of some ignorant idiot who has no respect for anybody. But it does fill me with resolve to keep going and to continue the fight. And I suppose if there's a unifying theme to everything that's happened this week, is that eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. We have to be eternally vigilant, and we have to call things out. And we've got to be, as Jordan Peterson says, honest. Absolutely, if we can't be honest, at least don't lie. And that doesn't mean the same as getting your facts wrong or misunderstanding someone. I mean, I'm talking about deliberate lying here. The fight has got to be continued, and it is a fight. But we're winning bit by bit, guys. We just work together as a team. It's my big advice at the moment. We're going to disagree. Those of us on the anti-left are going to disagree about specifics, but we've got to be united broadly. I think if we are going to see a world where we can be decent human beings and follow the truth, pursue the truth, and do have genuine respect and consideration for others. And on that note, I am going to eat a biscuit, but it's way over that side of the room at the moment. I'm just going to sign off tonight. I hope you have a good week, and trust me, I'm going to go over there in a second and eat a biscuit. Okay, have faith. Until next time, goodbye.